Welcome in. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. It is, again, our bonus year-end edition of the Minnesota Football Party with Reggie Wilson and Ron Johnson. We're really glad that you're with us, whether it is on video on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel or the audio. Find us on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. We've got a lot to get to, year-end edition, not the most joyous occasion, but Reggie gives us the report from his time in Arizona. We'll talk about a Super Bowl window. Does it relate to the Minnesota Vikings, or was this a one-off season? Plus, Harrison Smith, has he played his final game as a Viking? And I've got another round of the always exciting quarterback Would You Rather offseason edition. But let's let our panel introduce themselves today. Take it away.
Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11, and it's so sad that it's over. But that thing just crashed and burned.
I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers wide receiver, NFL wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer. And I'm going to talk about why the Hall of Fame is coming, but not as soon as we think for the Minnesota Vikings.
And I want to remind folks that I'm Sam Ekstrom, and we're brought to you today by FanDuel. This is an unbelievable deal that you do not want to miss. New customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You won't see this every day. Bet 5, get 300. All right. Reggie Wilson was at the scene of the crime Monday night, and it was like basically criminal activity. Like, it was felonious what the Rams did to Sam Darnold that night. They battered him. 9 sacks. It was unbelievable, the pass rush, and I'm sure the locker room was a weird place to be that night, Reggie, with the abruptness of the season ending, the way the game went, probably a deflating atmosphere. Give me your take on it. You were there with your boots on the ground. What was it like in there?
So Arizona did a really good job of making it feel like a Rams home game, and it really did. Couldn't really tell from the press box, but then, I had a couple hits that I had to do for TV at 10 o'clock, and I was down on the concourse amongst the people, and man, like it was a home like atmosphere. It was like we were at SoFi, honestly. And when I got down there, it felt like we were in LA. And I had to remember for a second, like, oh, yeah, like we're in Arizona. That's right. And so they had done a good job of like covering up all the Cardinal stuff and replacing it with Ram stuff. On short notice, that was a pretty good job that they did. That said, when the game started, I felt like they wanted to start fast. But that first drive from the Rams, it was like, oh, what are we in for? Stafford goes 6 for 6 on that first drive and just surgical. And then, throws a touchdown pass to Kyron Williams. And it's like, all right, what are the Vikings going to do to punch back? And they couldn't punch back. And it was so many like missed opportunities there, starting with the scoop and score that wasn't the fumble that wasn't a fumble, that was a forward shovel pass. And it was interesting because even though Stafford said he was trying to do that, I don't think the ball really went forward like he was intending on. I think he ended up with the open hand and the ball ended up like falling out of there. But that was a huge point in the game. And I felt like that was very deflating. And it just seemed to kind of snowball from there. And we saw, the Darnold interception. And he just looked like he couldn't believe what was happening out there. And I think, I know Ron tweeted about this, couldn't really save Darnold from himself. I don't think Kevin O'Connell did, which was tough because, those 5-7 step drops, long developing routes. And then, when he did get back there to the end of his drops, guys weren't open. But it was also like Darnold forgot that he could throw the ball away. He forgot that he could scramble around and get out of things. His tendency to spin around and go backwards really hurt because he's taking sacks for 9 and 10-yard losses, really not helping the offense. And then, just simple stuff when they did decide to try to get the ball out of his hands quicker, he's overthrowing screen passes, and it just really snowballed. And I really couldn't reconcile in my mind what I watched leading up to the Detroit game. Like, the peak was the Packers game, 377 yards, multiple touchdowns. He's running into the locker room. They're tossing water on him. He's dancing. And then you juxtapose that to what we saw in Arizona. And what happened? I don't understand. Yes, the intensity ratcheted up, the games meant more, but Darnold seemed to be highly composed in bigger games this season, and it just didn't happen. And I just think from a play calling standpoint and just from an execution standpoint, it was a fail all around. And the defense played well enough for the second straight week. They played well enough, and then they couldn't get any help, and then the dam broke. Mm-hmm. And so you asked about the locker room. What you saw in the locker room was, I think, guys that were really just kind of shocked. It was kind of setting in as they were kind of changing. And as we were in there talking to him, Josh Metellus is in tears as he's talking to us.
Wow. Cam
Bynum sitting in his locker, he's in tears. Between him and Theo Jackson, I don't know who was planning, but it was planned between them. Ryan, you'll enjoy this, or maybe not enjoy, but you'll understand. But one of them was playing Boys to Men, End of the Road, and it was just playing loud as we were talking to other players. And it was somber, it was sad. We got tears from Harrison Smith just talking about, would this be the end? His feelings on Metellus and Cam Bynum, just talking about being a mentor to those guys and playing under Flo. This team could look totally different next year. And I think it was kind of setting in for everybody. And it was sad. It was sad. But I thought Jonathan Grenard had the most level of the situation. He was just like, look, you guys saw I tweeted more is required, but it's true. More is required. We got to go back to work and make sure that we're not in this situation again. So it was tough. Justin Jefferson rolled his ankle, so he was kind of limping out of there.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was gracious with us. He said he was good, but he was gracious with us. He talked to us for a good while, leaving there. And, we asked him about the quarterback situation, and he was like, look, man, it's going into next year is the same situation as last year. And he's just like, look, I'm confident in my abilities and being able to beat the double teams and whoever's throwing me the ball. I'm confident I'll be able to, do what I need to do. But he was saying more is required from him, beating those double teams, as I said, and really just going back to the lab and making sure that he's doing what he can to help the offense out. So it was an interesting situation. Aaron Jones we got tears from him. He didn't really want to, go there as far as the future, just because the game had just happened, but he hoped to be back. It was a lot going on after the game, and it was just tough. It was tough for us, covering this team. I'm looking forward to, getting some cheesesteaks in Philly next week, and it's over. 14 wins, 9-game win streak, and it's over in a matter of a similar to 2022 in that way.
Like by halftime, right? It felt like the game was over at halftime of your first playoff game. And Ron, what do you think is the most deflating piece? Is it the fact that you had 14 wins and that's really hard to do and you weren't able to do anything with it? Is it that some players won't be back? Is it that you don't know who your quarterback's going to be going forward? What do you think it creates that sense of that letdown that we're all feeling right now?
Well, the fact that it happened twice. So you lose to the Lions, you lose to the Rams, you lose to the Lions, you lose to the Rams. It's literally do-over. And so Dan Orlovsky has tweeted this out. I tweeted it out. I mean, a bunch of people did it. I did it first, so just shout out to myself. But I tweeted out the plays that I saw that I'm like, something's off here. And then when I do it, people like say stuff and I'm not saying everybody. A lot of people. I mean, I think it's like 1 million. Some of these things have hit 1 million views now, but some people take it personal and say like, oh, well, he got out coached. No, he didn't. They did this. Dan Orlovsky says it. Everybody's like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying now. And here's my point. This was deflating. You have a 14-win season. So yes, Sam, that's one of it. And then you can't beat two teams twice. And one of them, the Lions, unbeatable. I think they are unbeatable. But the Rams literally did what the Lions did, which we talked about this. Bracketing Justin Jefferson, not allowing the defensive line to have to blitz. It was basically saying like, look, we're going to make your quarterback run if he has to. And that's why I think it's not going to work. Rams, Eagles, you can't do that, Jalen Hurts. You double A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts is just going to run. Saquon Barkley's going to run. And that's what the Vikings never did was number count. Look at how far the DBs are out. Look at how much depth they have from the line and just say, hey, Aaron Jones, if I can this, man, I'm running to the short side. They did it one time, I think, with Cam Akers to the left, and that was the biggest play of the game as far as a run game play. He canned the play. He counted 4 guys to his left, 7 to his right, and he ran the ball to his left. After that, I have no clue why he didn't do that. So that's a little deflating, period, when you think about how good this team was. Yes, we know Christian Darrisaw went out. Yeah, we know the offensive line. Like Kevin O'Connell mentioned, he has to shore up the upfront line. But that's deflating because when you look at guys like Harrison Smith and some of these guys, you were hoping this was the season. And like he was on our post-game show with the fan line and he was in tears. You know, you could hear it. Ben Lieber, I don't know why Ben Lieber started crying, but Ben Lieber felt like he needed to cry a little bit. So like you could just tell it was getting emotional. And I get it. Ben's been covering the team for a long time. I mean, we all have. We've been doing this for about 10, 11 years now. But it's just frustrating to see how good this team is. And for them to say, we're going to take away Justin Jefferson with the safety. Just run him through every time. Just say, hey, JJ, I need you to be a dummy this game, man. Like they are taking you out of this. Like we can't force the ball to you. Kevin O'Connell said, he was like, I told him, watch – or not Kevin O'Connell. Somebody said that Kevin O'Connell, like somebody insider, Kevin Seifert said it was watch Justin Jefferson and then come back to Jordan Addison. No, just know they're going to double Justin Jefferson and go somewhere else. Like that should have been the call. And that's what's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you win 13 games a couple of years ago, right? And you hope that that's the start of something. And then you see them fall off the way they did the next year and the injuries hit. You lose your quarterback. You lost Justin Jefferson for a long stretch. And the lesson there is that nothing's guaranteed in the NFL. The 49ers made the Super Bowl, and then they had the year from hell. They won 7 games with most of the same guys because of injuries. One thing or another, late game collapses. The NFL's random. It's really hard to sustain success. So the fact that that guarantees nothing for 2025. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much roster turnover. It's really hard to build it back up and do what the Lions are doing, honestly. Like that's why Dan Campbell, I think, is in some ways deserving of that Coach of the Year as well as Kevin O'Connell, because he got them with most of the same core to play at an even higher level than they did last year, which was a pretty high level to begin with. It's hard to duplicate in the NFL, and that's why it's tough to swallow for the Vikings, because you had a shot. You had a shot this year to make something special happen, and you didn't even begin to get on that journey. When we come back, we'll talk about whether the Super Bowl window is opening or whether this was a one-off season that does not lead to a Super Bowl window. That's coming up next on our bonus episode of the Minnesota Football Party. Teased it in the open, but there's an unbelievable deal right now at FanDuel that you have to take advantage of for the final 3 rounds of the NFL playoffs. From the first whistle to the final drive, there are wagering options. You can bet the spread, the money line, the over-under before the game, during the game with live wagering options. And if you're a new customer, take advantage of this. Bet $5, get $300 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. So make sure that's a smart $5 bet. Maybe not a nice money line that you can take advantage of. Doesn't have to be NFL. And you get $300 in your pocket to keep the action going at FanDuel if you win that $5 bet. Very easy app to navigate. Also go to FanDuel.com to get started. Check out FanDuel.com and get those $300 in bonus bets. Make the playoff season unforgettable at an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It's FanDuel. All right, we always talk about Super Bowl windows, and that's what we're going to get into next year on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Hey, please subscribe, by the way. We got to 9,000 subscribers this postseason. Now we're on the journey to 10,000 subscribers. Help us get there. Please hit that subscribe button. Super Bowl window, Ron. Is it opening? Or was this an open and shut season? Do you feel like there is a crack here where, all right, the door is beginning to open now on something that could sustain over several years? Or like I mentioned, is it a year-to-year proposition?
I think it's year to year. But here's where I go with this. They won 13 games the first year. They could have won 13 games the next year, and then they won 14 this year. And here's why. So a lot of people forget this. Kirk Cousins got hurt. But if you go back, so they lose to the Bucs, they lose to the Eagles, and everybody's, oh, shoot, we suck, blah, blah. But then they rattle off 2 wins. They beat the Panthers. They beat the Chargers. Then they lose to the Chiefs. They beat the Bears. They beat the 49ers, and all hope is there. They beat the Packers. Kirk Cousins is out. But here's the key. If Kirk Cousins had continued to play, they would have beat the Falcons regardless. They beat the Saints. They would have beaten the Broncos. They lost to the Broncos by 1, and we have to go back to that game, how bad it was. They would have beat the Broncos. They lose to the Bears 10-12. They would have beat the Bears again. They beat the Raiders. They lose to the Bengals 27-24. They would have beaten the Bengals. That's 13 wins. Even if they lost to the Lions, they lost to the Packers bad 33-10, but they already beat the Packers with Kirk. I think they would have beat them again. That's 14 wins. That means they would have still had 14 wins, only losing to the Lions twice last year, as well as the other teams that were really good. But they beat the 49ers, but losing to the Chiefs, who cares? Like, they were good. Losing to the Eagles, who cares? They were good. Like, that would have been the only losses. They would have had another 13 or 14 win season and could have went 14-3 or 13-4, losing to the Eagles, Lions twice, and the Chiefs. Like, I think the window is where it's at now. I feel like it might start to close, and here's the reason why. If Brian Flores does happen to leave, and it doesn't seem like it as of now, because it looks like a lot of the coaches they want to interview have already been interviewed. I don't know if this is a solidarity by the owner saying, look, until this settlement is closed, we're not going to worry about that because we know, whatever. We know what's going on with litigation. But I feel like if Brian Flores leaves and the defense changes, I think the window closes. That defense is predicated on turnovers. It's predicated on the blitz. I don't know what the next defensive coordinator would do. You are starting to see Josh McCown and other offensive minds within Kevin O'Connell's offensive structure starting to get, picked off, where people are thinking like, hey, like maybe we can bring him in as offensive coordinator. Because the fact that Kevin O'Connell doesn't have a true, Wes Phillips, yes, but any of these guys now can be elevated to true play caller. Because all you have to do is take a higher role within the organization, and the only thing they have to do is say, come be our play caller. Because right now, none of them are. It's Kevin O'Connell. And so I feel like the window is what it is. It's year to year. But I do feel like, even with J.J. McCarthy coming in, I feel like it might be closing if they don't win one in the next year or two.
Reggie, let me throw something at you. You can react to it. But this would be support, in my mind, for going the McCarthy route this offseason versus the Darnold route. And we're going to get into that as well with quarterback would you rather later in the show. But I look to the Washington Commanders. Last offseason, they turned to a rookie quarterback. Second overall pick, Jaden Daniels. And they probably didn't know he was going to be this good. But I'm going to give you the list. This is what they did in free agency with comparable cap space to the Minnesota Vikings, like in that $70 million range. Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, high-end backup in Marcus Mariota, Zach Ertz, Frankie Louvu, Dante Fowler, Tyler Biadasz, sorry on the pronunciation, so some interior line help there, Nick Allegretti, Jeremy Chin, Dorrance Armstrong, big contract, Jamison Crowder, Michael Dieter, Olamide Zaccheaus, Noah Igbinogene, and you add a couple more depth guys. It's a huge class. A lot of those guys are starters. A lot of them are well paid. That's one offseason for Washington. They went out, they bolstered the roster with about $70 million to play with. Same situation for the Vikings, and the needs are different, but conceptually, that gets me excited about restocking this roster, replacing the free agents you're going to lose, bringing some guys back, and keeping your roster really strong. And if J.J. McCarthy's anything like Jaden Daniels was, then I do think there is some Super Bowl window possibility.
Yeah, that's a solid comparison. I know too. I've seen people kind of tweeting about how, you know, Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins before and Sam Darnold this year. It's kind of like the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid and Alex Smith. And so in theory, you know, Kevin O'Connell has his Patrick Mahomes with JJ McCarthy, and now, you know, they're going to go on this Super Bowl run. But I think you have the right idea, Sam, you know, with all the cap space that they have, not the luxury of a lottery pick, if you will, with, you know, I think it's what, like they're slated to be like 24th in the draft now.
Yeah.
And so, you know, not necessarily a pick that a premium, you know, you can get like a lineman or, you know, something like that. But, you know, they'll be able to get a good player still at 24. But you know, only have so many draft picks this year because of all the wheeling and dealing, you know, letting Kwesi cook in the past drafts that he's had in Minnesota. But you utilize that cap space and you can really turn this thing into something. You kind of look at the model of what San Francisco has done and what the Rams have done, especially in those years where, you know, Les Snead was like F them picks and, you know, they were building through, you know, talented free agents and just trying to draft complementary players. You saw now what they've done when they have just been able to draft players. You know, that Rams team is mostly made up of good draft picks that, you know, they're out there, you know, Jared Verse is out there body slamming Sam Darnold, which was crazy. But you look at some of the free agents that they have and then the amount of money that they have, they can go ahead and really kind of revamp this team and build a bit of a bully, if you will, and really kind of support McCarthy from an interior offensive line standpoint and bolster that defense with some premium talent on the outside and the back end of the defense, and also on the inside with the interior of the line on defense as well. And they could do some things. I think, you know, they have a strong foundation on offense with, you know, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor. You know, those are great weapons for JJ McCarthy to come in and do well with. And then, you know, maybe if you find a way to sign Daniel Jones to a 1-year, $15 million deal or something like that to back up McCarthy, and now you got your insurance, just in case McCarthy is not ready to go week 1. I think the Vikings are in good shape. I think the window, I think it stays open just because you can put some good talent around McCarthy. Maybe, you know, because Patrick Mahomes kind of came into the league and really hit the ground running. I don't know that it's fair to expect the same from McCarthy, especially that, you know, Mahomes was healthy playing behind Alex Smith. And, you know, McCarthy, you know, he talked about the virtual reality stuff that he's done, the stuff with the GoPro and, you know, getting the mental reps, but he hasn't been physically healthy enough to get the reps behind Darnold this year. So he still has a little bit to go. It's really going to be quite like a rookie season for him out there on the field. So I'm just interested to see how that turns out. But I think the window could be open if they build up around him and then give him the keys and not make him have to do too much right away.
Yeah, multiple ways to go about this from a franchise outlook standpoint. Like the Packers, for instance, they went super young, right? A couple of years ago, they ditched Rodgers, went unbelievably young, cut a bunch of veterans, and their window is based around youth and cost effectiveness, building up through the draft, young players getting better, ascending. Now they kind of plateaued this year. The Vikings had the oldest roster in the NFL, arguably one of the 2 oldest rosters in the NFL. because they went and they got mature veterans. And I think that Kwesi likes to build this team that way. And that's how, because of the way the drafts have gone, he's traded a lot of his draft assets, right, to get veteran players. That seems to be his priority. So the Vikings have gone about it that way. And it seems like they will continue to go about it that way because they only have 4 picks this year. They got a first, a third, and a couple fifths. So it's going to have to be based in free agency. They're going to have an older roster, but that also might mean a more mature team. Before we get into some quarterback stuff, I do want to touch on players that could be departing, and particularly Harrison Smith, because I think the Vikings have a lot in place. They don't have much in the secondary, and Harrison Smith's future is a big factor as well in rebuilding that secondary. Let's actually get into that now before we break. Ron, so Harrison Smith, very emotional in the locker room. Reggie, you were probably right there. You saw him choking up. He choked up with Ben Lieber. He was feeling the feels. Now, I don't necessarily read that as I'm done. I read it as I'm 35. I'm late in my career. I got so close. I don't know how many more of these chances I have. And this was a special group that I greatly enjoyed. And the future is uncertain. I don't know if it means he's done. What's your gut say?
Yeah, I don't think that means he's done either. That's why I said I think the Hall of Fame is coming, but I don't think because he's going to be a first 5 years out the league, he's a guy in. I just don't see him really feeling like, because Brian Flores talked about resting him and finding ways to get him some bench time and getting more reps for Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus. How can you do that when he's playing at the level he's playing? And how can you do that when he's not asking for it? And that was the thing. Like, they kind of let him know, like, look, like if you think about training camp, they didn't force him to do everything. They didn't force him to always be out there. He got to do the veteran rest thing. I mean, it's going to be his 14th season if he decides to come back. I think that's the key for this, is like he's on a Peyton Manning practice schedule. He's probably not going to have to do as much because he knows this defense in and out. God forbid it changes and Brian Flores does go somewhere else. But if the defense is the same, there's not much for him to do and learn besides, hey, I'm going to be in the back of the nest with a bow and arrow, and I'll take out anything deep. And that's what he does. He lets Josh Metellus and Cam Bynum roam the field. They get to go blitz. He'll blitz every once in a while, but I don't really feel like he's satisfied with how this ended because, like I said, 3 seasons in a row, they could have had 13 or more wins. And I think he feels that too. And why not be a part of maybe the 1 year with JJ McCarthy and see how special it can be?
Yeah. He only made $9 million this year against the cap. That's not an absurd number. Even though he's a future Hall of Famer, he's not that highly paid among safeties, Reggie. I think that it's after he takes some time, and if Flores stays, who I think he has a ton of respect for, maybe Bynum resigns. Like, that's his guy. Metellus is his guy. He really enjoys playing around them. To me, I think that there could be a very real world where they say, hey, let's give him 2 years and $14 million and just, roll the dice. He can take it year to year and bring this guy back. Cause I don't think there's any drop off in performance.
Yeah. And also too, like just having that guy in the room, and his knowledge of the game and just being out there, like able to kind of quarterback the defense, if you will, I think is very valuable. Maybe he's not the same guy that he was, 5-6 years ago. And fans still, from all that I've seen, with that tweet from Don that went viral, just kind of reading the comments, like fans still want to see him out there. And so, I think it's valuable to keep them there. And yeah, if they do like another 1 year deal, or maybe they do a 2 year deal, Sam, I like that option as well. You can tell that, it's not for him about the money, if you will. It's about the love of the game and just loving playing for these guys. And so, I think Harrison has not had a Super Bowl experience and hasn't had a chance to make a run. And you can tell, the future seems bright with JJ McCarthy, and this team seems like it's ascending. And Kevin O'Connell has done a great job of getting the most out of the teams that he's had the last 3 seasons. And so, I think he wants to be a part of that. He's gone through some dog years in Minnesota. He's seen some good years in Minnesota, and they seem to be on the uptick right now. And so I think he would love to continue to be a part of that if possible. But, it was interesting hearing him say, like, when I've played this game as long as I've played, like, everything hurts at some point. And so I think, you just have to weigh that. It was interesting, just kind of drawing a comparison here. When I was doing my live hits on the field in Arizona pregame, Aaron Donald walked past. And you want to talk about a dude that still looks like he could play. Like, he looks like if they gave him some pads and a helmet right now, he can go in there and wreck an offense. And so I thought about that. I'm like, man, imagine if Aaron Donald was playing in this game. Like, even how much more scary that would have been for Darnold, even taking those 9 sacks without Aaron Donald being in there. And he just decided, like, man, look, I just don't want to go through the grind anymore. Like, I'm tired. Like, I started my career in St. Louis, came through LA, and, I got my Super Bowl ring, and I've just been kind of playing for the love of the game. And now the love of the game is just gone as far as playing. You could tell he still loves the Rams from some of the things he was putting out on social media during the game. But, you could still see, as opposed to Aaron Donald, you could still see that fire in Harry's eyes for playing. And I think that he'll probably take a little bit of time and decide if he wants to go through that grind again. Whereas, like, Aaron Donald was like, yeah, like, Jonathan Grenard was saying, like, when you go through these workouts in the offseason, like, if your tongue is not on the ground, like, you're not doing it right. And Aaron Donald's like, man, look, I don't want to do those type of workouts. Those type of workouts anymore, and these double teams that I face on Sundays and all that. And, Harry's able to play a little bit more free than a guy like Aaron Donald. And so, and he's still playing at, a relatively high level. So I could see him, kind of weighing his options and maybe making a decision to come back again. But, he does understand. You could tell from the emotions that he understands that he has more time behind him than he does in front of him. And all that seems to set in going back to last season, and then this year in the locker room talking about it as well.
Well, I talked about this earlier in the show, and I think Harrison Smith's career is a great example of this, the year-to-year volatility of the NFL. So let's look at Harrison Smith's best seasons and then the years that followed. 2012 rookie year, Vikings made the playoffs. Next year, 5-10-1, missed the playoffs entirely, missed the playoffs the next year. Then 2015, won the division, open US Bank Stadium, hopes are high, missed the playoffs. 2017, make the NFC Championship game. 2018, bring in Kirk Cousins, missed the playoffs. 2019, you win a playoff game. 2020, COVID year, missed the playoffs. And then obviously 2022, we know what happened. 2023, missed the playoffs. He's never been to the playoffs back-to-back years. He understands that there is nothing guaranteed for him. He can't ensure that he gets to be a part of a Super Bowl contender next year because nobody on earth knows. Tim in the comments, hard disagree. He's cooked, needs to retire. When was he cooked? At what point did he show you that he was cooked?
Kind of harsh.
I can't recall the cooking. Demonstrate the cooking to me. I'm looking at the analytics. I've got the numbers here. There's zero drop-off. Like, if you liked him last year, if you liked him the year before, same guy. Actually more productive this year in a number of ways. Ron, I don't think Harrison Smith's dropped off in performance. Your thoughts on that?
No. I mean, when you watch him and what he's asked to do, still gets after the quarterback at a high level, still plays the back end, catches the ball with his hands, still can make, leaping grabs. I will say, not decline. I will say his foot speed probably slowed down a little bit, but that's why they're not asking him to cover like he used to. He used to drop down in the box more, and maybe defensive scheme change as well. Like Mike Zimmer was a little bit bigger on that when they went man free or zero coverage. Harrison Smith could cover tight ends or could cover certain receivers like a Tyler Johnson or somebody, but Flores doesn't need that. He goes single high, and then he has Josh Metellus and Cam Bynum play that game. So he rarely needs Harrison Smith to do it, and I think that's the other part of it. But, I mean, it's just attrition. Over time, you're going to get a little bit slower. Like, it is what it is. But as far as productivity and is he a liability? No.
Yeah, I'm trying to pass 55 pass rush snaps too. I mean, they got him flying in the box. His missed tackle rate is still, pretty low. He's making run stops. He's making plays in the open field.
Yeah.
Including on Monday night. He was still making those type of plays. So I would welcome him back. I think the Vikings would too. And he has consistently taken very team-friendly deals as his career's gone on. There's never been an ounce of greed there. So I think that it would be beneficial for everybody if he came back. And if he doesn't, he'll be one of the most beloved Vikings of all time. When we come back, quarterback, would you rather? Another edition of your favorite game, everybody, next on the Minnesota Football Party. We are brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. Let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. And with LinkedIn, you're getting the strongest hiring data imaginable. They help you identify the right candidates to give you confidence to make that right decision for your business. Because if you're a small business, you might not make that many hires. You want to nail it when you do and get the best candidates. 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. They use AI. They use description tools to help you write up the job description. And you can post that for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Hire smarter this year. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Terms and conditions apply. All right, rolling on. Minnesota Football Party. Check out our full lineup of Football Party shows. Also, the Ron Johnson Show on Tuesdays. Get his season review yesterday. It was the morning after the game. It was we were all very sad then, still kind of sad now. But the offseason, waits for no man. It's arrived. We're in it right now. And we're going to be talking about this quarterback decision for the next 2 months. So I've got 3 scenarios for you. The premise of this game is that Sam Darnold is gone. I'm sure we'll talk in the future about Sam Darnold coming back, but in this particular exercise, Sam Darnold is gone. I've got 3 scenarios for you guys on directions that the Vikings could go. These are going to be controversial. Reggie, give me your thoughts on this one. J.J. McCarthy paired with Kirk Cousins on a Russell Wilson type deal. So Cousins gets cut by the Falcons and he can sign for basically the minimum because the money's guaranteed to him. I think that's how it works. Cousins on a cheapie paired with McCarthy. That's one side of it. Or J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones. Your thoughts?
Ooh.
And Sam, you said Kirk Cousins with J.J. McCarthy as a backup?
Yeah, Cousins on a 1 year, 1 year cheapo with McCarthy, or McCarthy starts and then, or McCarthy competes with Jones.
I'll do the second scenario. I think you got Kirk out of the door. I don't know that you open it back up again. He's like such a polarizing figure. And now, fans have seen what happened in Atlanta this year. Seems like, the game is a little bit passing Kirk a little bit. And so I don't know that necessarily helps. And then also, Kirk in his mind sees himself as a starter. And so, I don't know that at this point in his career, he's like, you know what, I'm not going in and wanting to compete with the young guy. Like that's not what I want to do. Yeah. I think Kirk still believes that he's a bona fide starter in the league. And so I think he's going to be seeking something like that. I don't know that he's at the point now where he would do a Russell Wilson type deal anyway. And I just don't know how beneficial that is also for McCarthy's development and just for, the vibe that they're building in the building with, their post-Kirk plan. I just don't know that works. So I'll do Jones and McCarthy.
I'm trying to think if there's any track record of a franchise quarterback leaving the way Kirk did and then returning. I wonder if that's happened in the league. Ron, your thoughts?
Ooh, I kind of like Kirk. Like I do, because I feel like you know what you're getting out of Kirk. You feel like Kevin O'Connell. Again, I think the Falcons didn't do Kirk any justice because what they did, well, and he was coming off an Achilles. Like it takes a while to come off of an Achilles and be ready to go. And when you think about like Kirk Cousins and what he could be under Kevin O'Connell, giving JJ McCarthy one more year to fully sit back, watch how the offense should be. I just don't think Kirk would do it. Like, I don't think he wants to do it. It's almost like tucking his tail between his legs, unless he feels like, hey, I'm screwing the Falcons over if I just come play for a little bit, and then we get to beat the Falcons, and I get to go back and do the swag surf on them from Minneapolis. Like, bring Atlanta Kirk back to Minnesota. Like, bring the flavor, like maybe the aux core to change up with Kirk in the locker room after being in Atlanta. He's like, I didn't know the Migos had a playlist like this. Like, I didn't know Future really had Gucci flip-flops under his girl's bed. Like, Kirk Cousins would come back with a totally different mindset. But I got to go with Daniel Jones and JJ McCarthy. I think if you're going to do it that way, Daniel Jones is not a threat to JJ McCarthy. If you start JJ McCarthy over Daniel Jones, nobody bats an eye. If you start JJ McCarthy over Kirk, then it becomes more controversy, and I don't think you need that in your locker room.
Yeah. This is also part of the reason why the Vikings can't sustain success, is because all their best seasons happen with one-off quarterbacks, whether it's Randall Cunningham, Brett Favre, Case Keenum, Sam Darnold. To have that sustained success, I think you got to have the same guy back there. And that starts probably with
the funniest was that season could have been a Sam Bradford year.
Yes, it started that way, and it started really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he ended up being the backup in the playoffs that year because his knee got better. Next one, JJ McCarthy needs a good mentor. How about a future Hall of Famer? You have to choose. You can't not choose McCarthy and a bridge of Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Ron.
So say the options again.
McCarthy is he gets a year on the bench for a future Hall of Famer to start for 1 year. It's Russell Wilson or it's Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I mean, I like Sierra coming to town because
I knew you would go that way. I knew that was your
Our halftime shows would get better. I would go with Russell Wilson just because I don't want to deal with. I mean, Aaron Rodgers would be like a media drain. Like he would be a energy suck. I feel like he would suck the energy out of Minnesota. We'd have to listen to the Brett Favre, arc. Villain arc stories of how Aaron Rodgers is about to become Brett Favre. And the next thing you know, he's going to do an interview with a reporter and she's going to get pics in her phone. Like, I just don't want to go that route with Aaron Rodgers. I think Russell Wilson, and the Steelers said this, has proven to be like a leader in the locker room, has proven to be a great, because, a lot of people kept saying he's corny, he's this, he's that. And you notice that talk has gone away this year. Like when you get him with Mike Tomlin and you get him some black Air Forces, that whole corny conversation is out the door. Mike Tomlin has kind of said, like, look, Russ, man, be you, but here's how you be you, and he's allowed him to be him. He didn't come in with the Let's Ride or, Bronco Nation or, he kind of let it die. He started off and everybody's like, what's it going to be with the Steelers? Now it's just like, you know what, man, this is a blue collar town. Like this is work. So I could see him coming to Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, being a great leader, mentor, spiritual guy, religious guy, like a good locker room guy. He wouldn't come in with some weird, Aaron Rodgers just comes in with weird energy. Like it's weird. I don't know what it is. And it sucked the life out of New York. It seems like it sucks the life out everywhere he's gone now. Like even, his former ex-wife or ex-girlfriend or fiance or whatever said that he was mentally and physically draining on her, like just how he is. So I just don't want that in the locker room.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I would rather watch, I think, Aaron Rodgers play football than Russell Wilson. He's a frustrating quarterback to me. And I think Rodgers could actually mesh pretty well with Kevin O'Connell. But for the reasons you just laid out, that's the last guy I would want around JJ McCarthy. So I think, and Russell Wilson, hey, he loves throwing that high arcing deep ball. He could give Justin Jefferson a lot of chances. He could buy a little bit of time. Kevin O'Connell loves those long developing routes. I'd probably go Russ as well. And I would probably cringe the whole time, but I'd be cringing either way. Reggie, what do you think?
Yeah, I want nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. Like, don't bring him anywhere near the locker room in Minnesota. I think that would be Funny enough, though, I think McCarthy and Russell Wilson have very similar personalities. Just like two upbeat guys, very eclectic guys, QB weird guys, which is good. That's good. I think they'd be a great mix. I think what's been interesting is I've been watching Hard Knocks. I don't know if you've watched it, Ron, the in-season Hard Knocks with the AFC North, and Russ, the viral clip that's going around was Russ, grabbing Cam Hayward after they lost to end the regular season. He's like, hey, let's go win 4 more. Come on, let's go win 4 more. And it's just like, I think Russ has the will and has the drive and says the right things and is a motivational guy. But I don't think he's any more than just like a glorified, like motivational speaker in the QB room at this point. He'll make a couple, rainbow throws to the receiver on the outside and, still has a little bit of improvisational skill, but he's not the quarterback that he was. He was much more competent in this Arthur Smith Steelers offense this year than he's been in recent years. But I don't think he necessarily, I think he still wants to work. I think he still believes that he can be a high-level quarterback, but I just don't think he is anymore. But I do think that having him in the QB room would be immense for McCarthy in his development and just learning how to be a pro and someone who's won a Super Bowl, who's played at a high level, and has not been toxic like Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm all in if that's a situation that could happen.
I don't need Aaron Rodgers going on McAfee and spreading company secrets. Just don't need that. Let's keep it in the building. One more. This one's a little tamer. Which former Vikings backup would you bring in to support JJ McCarthy? I'm giving you 4. So there's 4 available. Josh Dobbs, retain Nick Mullins, Taylor Heineke, or Case Keenum, who is still an active NFL player. Ron.
Can I say none of them for 500, Alex? I don't like any of those choices. I really don't.
Dobbs?
No,
like Dobbs?
not as a backup. Like, I like Dobbs. I like Dobbs as like an energetic, like, come in and make us entertain us. Make me a balloon clown. Like, I just don't know if any of those guys like get me going. Like, oh, this is our backup. This is a great like. None of those guys, like that list as you named it, felt like, oh yeah, that's a good backup to bring back for JJ McCarthy. Like, none of those guys do. But if I have to pick one of that group, I probably go Nick Mullins over Case Keenum. Like, I'm kind of in the Nick Mullins or Case Keenum. But again, even Case Keenum, like Taylor Heineke has won some NFL games. He was a starter for a little bit, a couple years, like a year or two ago. For the Commanders, right before they got Jaden Daniels was Taylor Heineke.
He went 12, 11, and 1 in 2 years with the Commanders. Yeah,
that's what I say. I knew he was a starter there. So I guess I'd have to go Mullins, Heineke. Give me Mullins or Heineke, like those two.
Okay. You'll roll the dice on
1A or 1B. I don't think either of them like stands out, so I would go 1A. Like, give me Heineke or give me Mullins.
I think I'm a Josh Dobbs loyalist, I guess. I like the Pasternaut. I watched him with the 49ers too when he got in games late in the year, and I thought he looked good. He's got a strong arm. He obviously comes in and knows the language KOC is trying to speak. And when you have a backup, you want someone that can go in and make something happen. You want someone exactly like you did 2 years ago. So I'm going to go with Dobbs. What would you go with, Reggie?
Yeah, I say Mullins just from a continuity standpoint. I think I would just stick with a guy who has been in the offense for several years, knows the offense really well, kind of is an extension of Kevin O'Connell out there. And, maybe he's not being demonstrative in some of the things that Kevin O'Connell once done, because he can be kind of volatile out there, as we saw last season. But I think he knows the offense well enough that he could really help McCarthy along in his process. And then if I had to pick another guy, I guess I would go Dobbs as well, just because, some of the improvisational skills, some of the athleticism, he and McCarthy kind of, mix in that regard. And so, he can kind of show McCarthy what to do in that offense a little bit more, as from an athleticism standpoint as well, because he lived it for several weeks.
King Leak in the comments. Yeah, the Denver game wasn't great, but I would one-up you with the Las Vegas game where he scored 0 points and got pulled, and then the Chicago game where I think he threw 4 picks and you lost to a terrible Bears team. That's what did it for Josh Dobbs. Bold predictions. We no longer have the Vikings to predict about, but props to Julia Daniels. She finally hit on her TJ Hawkinson touchdown prediction.
Oh, he took 10 weeks.
Julia, we're very happy for you. Ron, you had Darnold 300 yards, did not connect.
I thought he was going to get it too. I was like, they're going to have to throw the crap out this ball to come back. And I was like, oh, he's going to do it. No, you suck.
Little did you know that Kevin O'Connell would run the ball down 18 in the fourth quarter.
I said, bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it
works out. I had 4 sacks of Stafford. I should have said 17 sacks of Sam Darnold. That would have been the better prediction. But predictions for the divisional round of the playoffs. Let's start with Reggie.
Like who wins?
Nah, like just anything. Something that's going to happen. Could be a winner. Could be a margin of victory.
I think the Rams are going to go into Philly and beat the Eagles. I can see that. I can see that happening. Setting up Matthew Stafford trip back to Detroit and him having to beat his former team to go to the Super Bowl again. I could see it. It
could happen. It could happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. So when I'm looking at the divisional round games, I feel like the top seeds have it. I feel like it's gonna be Lions, Eagles, and I feel like it's gonna be who's that? Bills and Chiefs. I think that's because the Ravens travel to the Bills, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I feel like the top seeds have it. I feel like because we argue all the time about the college football playoff system and the NFL, the 5 shouldn't be there. That like after the way the Vikings played, they're the 5. Like they should not have gotten a home game with 14 wins. They didn't deserve it. So I think it played out the way it should have. I think it's gonna be 1 and 2 on the AFC and 1 and 2 in the NFC.
I think that's actually a pretty good bold prediction. I'm gonna say I was gonna go down this path, but more specifically, I think the Lions win by 20 plus.
Oh,
I think the Lions win by a bunch against the Commanders, who when you come off a dramatic playoff win the way you did, you've got a rookie quarterback, kind of becomes your Super Bowl a little bit. I think they're facing a whole new beast in Detroit. I think the Lions win by 1 million. And I think A.J. Brown's got a new book on the sideline in that Rams game. I think he's reading Dr. Seuss. He's reading something. That's going to be
reading because they're winning, or is he reading because he's just pissed off they're too close and he's not getting the ball?
that he's they're down per Reggie's prediction. They're down in the fourth quarter and he's reading Cat in the Hat. Something funny. That's all for today's bonus show. Minnesota Football Party covered a lot of ground. Reggie Wilson of Care 11, Ron Johnson, The Ron Johnson Show. Find them all over in Minnesota sports media. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks a lot for watching, listening. Thank you for subscribing and getting us past the 9,000 threshold. Talk to you next time.